If you wanted to descend the Pioneer Bridle Trail without a shuttle, but also did not want to ride it as an out and back, this is how you do it. Combining the Still Creek Road with Pioneer Bridle creates a one-sandwich, 20-mile mixed surface loop with about 2,600 feet of climbing that gives you a nice tour of some of the lesser-known and some of the better-known parts of the Mount Hood National Forest in a single ride. Before we go on, if you're enjoying informational content like this, please consider navigating to my Patreon page at patreon.com/voiceovertrails and consider joining so I can keep making these videos. The ride starts with 2 miles of single track on the Still Creek Trail, which terminates here at the Camp Creek Campground, right next to some convenient trailhead parking. Cross this bridge and then begin climbing the trail, which is somewhat rough at the beginning and will probably require a little bit of hike-a-bike before it opens up onto a nicely groomed bench. Shortly, the trail will cross this paved road and continues to the right. There's nothing particularly remarkable about this trail, other than that it's a pretty decent piece of single track, and until I rode it, I had no idea it even existed. So in that respect, I guess it is pretty cool after all, just knowing that it's here. But if I were staying at the campground and hiked this, I'd be pretty mad because, well, it doesn't really go anywhere. After 2 miles and roughly 250 feet of elevation gain, with about the same amount of elevation loss, the trail exits here on Still Creek Road. It would be tempting, given that there are 8 miles of this Cadillac gravel over which the Still Creek Road gains 1,800 feet of elevation, to bring a gravel bike for this ride. But this isn't a gravel ride. It's a mountain bike ride with a gravel transfer. Bring a flat bar hardtail at minimum. I'll go into more detail on that later in this review. The Still Creek Road is awesome. I wish I'd known this road was here a long time ago. This is a gravel road that goes straight from Camp Creek all the way up to Trillium Lake, and it's in fantastic shape. Basically, this road facilitates a relatively car-free route all the way up to Government Camp, and anyone interested in riding a bike up to Timberline Lodge should get a gravel bike so that they can ride this road instead of Highway 26 and then Westleg Road instead of Timberline Road for an almost serene, almost car-free experience through some lovely woods without the obnoxious highway noise. But on this ride, we're not going up to Timberline Lodge, and because of that, we're going to need a mountain bike. Once all these cabins come into view, the road is in close proximity to Trillium Lake, and from here, there are a lot of equally valid options for what to do next. It's helpful to have maps of this area downloaded because it's a guarantee that whatever you end up doing up here, it's going to be different than what you originally planned on doing. This is an extremely popular snowshoeing and cross-country skiing destination during the winter, but during the summer you can still ride your bike around the lake, check out the cabins, or just explore all the pioneer graves and artifacts. If you ride into the Still Creek Campground, which is another campground that for some reason I was unaware existed, even though I've probably unknowingly skied through it multiple times, you can pick up a snippet of the old Barlow Road listed on the map as part of the Barlow Trail. This was a surprisingly steep section of single track and even a little bit rough. The Barlow Road is historically significant since it was the first wagon road white people cut through the mountains to access Oregon City way back in the 1850s. It's basically one of the last snippets of the Oregon Trail, and it's pretty cool that it still exists. Try not to die of dysentery. After about 2 miles, over which the trail gains 300 feet in elevation, you'll find yourself in the ODOT yard, which then connects with Highway 26 just east of Government Camp, very close to the bottom of Timberline Road and that awesome rest stop that doubles as the Summit ski area in the winter. Ride west and turn right on McCoy Street, just past the Chevron station. You're trying to get to the Crosstown Trail. Routed up the mountain, through the forest just north of Government Camp, the 2-mile-long Crosstown Trail just kind of starts where the pavement ends. This is a pretty fun little cross-country ski and snowshoe trail in the winter, and it functions as a decent single-track connector to the Pioneer Bridle Trail after the snow melts. The trail gains about 150 feet before dropping elevation the rest of the way to the junction with Pioneer Bridle. When you see this intersection, continue to the left down the relatively wide trail with very nice wide ski bridges. Upon arriving at this intersection with the bottom of the Timberline to Town Trail, you'll want to proceed forward. At this point, the trail starts to really feel more like a proper mountain bike trail with some serious descent, but also with the added challenge that it's on the side of Mount Hood, an active volcano. So there are a lot of baby heads embedded in light and sandy ash with pumice. This will be a consistent theme as you continue to descend. Finally, the trail joins up with the Pioneer Bridle Trail here at the last major leg of the ride. It's mostly downhill from here except for one little interlude where it's not downhill. but that's been mitigated, though not eliminated, as I'll explain in a minute. Pioneer Bridle descends 1,800 feet over about 6 miles, but it's not a consistent grade all the way down. The first 3 miles of this trail are a lot steeper than the last 3 miles. Up here near the top, the trail descends through nice, thick west side forest with some decently steep grades, nice and swoopy turns, and abundant, well-maintained bridges. If you're riding this in the middle of the summer, this is also where you'll start encountering a lot more other mountain bikers, as this is the route folks shuttling the Timberline to Town trail use to descend back to Rhododendron, as one can take a bus up to Timberline Lodge and then ride single track all the way back to Rhododendron. It's kind of hard to believe that this trail exists, in my opinion, and I suspect that mountain bikers are the vast majority of users on this trail, as it's hard to recommend as a hiking destination. While it's pretty cool that there's single track from Rhododendron all the way up to Timberline Lodge, Highway 26 is clearly audible from the top to the bottom of this trail. You'll be hearing the highway the entire time. For a huffing and puffing climb or a ripping descent on a mountain bike, it's not really a problem, but it is a big problem for hikers because that's an awfully long way to hike while never actually getting away from a highway. There's an old mine shaft on this trail. That's what this split rail fence surrounding a random looking hole in the ground is all about. I'm pretty sure you can't access the old mine shaft, and even if you were inclined to do so, you shouldn't. By now, it should be clear just from looking at the video of the trail why a gravel bike is not the right bike for this ride. As great as it would have been on the way up, a fully rigid machine with 48C tires and drop bars is wildly inappropriate for what amounts to a proper single-track descent. Keep your eyes on the right side of the trail here, as there is a reroute that peels off to the right, and it's important not to miss it as it significantly mitigates the awful climb that's right in the middle of this descent. This nice piece of bench routes around a super steep descent that then turns into a super steep hike-a-bike climb. The reroute, on the other hand, is a nicely graded climbing bench that traverses through some very nice forest. It is a little rocky in places, but an intermediate rider should be able to get through it without dabbing. It takes a little while before the downhill segment of this trail really picks up speed, but eventually it does pick up speed. In this dark section of forest, which you can tell is dark because my GoPro is really struggling in here, the trail becomes a legitimately blue downhill shred. It's still not exactly a mountain bike trail though, with tight switchbacks and turns that are emblematic of a typical hiking trail, but there are some genuinely steep sections in here with some loose rocks, a little bit of chunder, and generally classical single track-like features. There are even some jibs and a few features that you can catch air off of if you like to get your wheels into the air. After this one steep and fun section, the trail then flattens out as it descends into some sparser tree cover over prolific rhododendron underbrush. This is very near where the trail crosses the highway, at the place where most self-shuttlers park if they're doing the T-to-T, as there's not really much more excitement to be had on this trail after the highway crossing. Okay, maybe that's a little extreme. It's not that there's no more fun to be had, it's just that for the next 3 or so miles, the trail is a lot flatter and rides pretty much like a stroller path with water bars on it. Ride on the stroller path until the trail crosses Road 32, then turn left. Ride along 32 for about a quarter mile or less until you get to this stub of a trail that will lead right into someone's campsite, but more importantly, leads right into the Camp Creek campground and return to the car. I'd like to take this moment to thank all of my Patreon supporters, especially my Loamy Goodness level sponsors Andy Suery, Charles Kim, Damon Corey, and Randy Relithford. I'd also like to thank my Hero Dirt level sponsors, earning their special mention at the end of this video: Bryce Ulrich, Heather Von Valkenburg, Jason Moore, Pedro Cantarini, and Todd McCarthy. If you'd like to join this list of people who like useful and inclusive YouTube commentary about trails, navigate to patreon.com/voiceovertrails and become a supporter. Now, get out there and go ride your bike.